Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the ELVIS Show, where we dive in conversations and matters pertaining to the improvement and the betterment of our lives as we bring different guests to share with us their stories and their insight. This is also a place where we marry communication with inspiration. We rise by lifting others. Warning, this is the high inspiring zone. The topic of our conversation today will revolve around fear, how to overcome it, because it is the one thing that stops us in our tracks of accomplishing our goals and realizing our dream, and also become the person that we want to become. And the guest today is the person who has gone through fear, has experienced it in its rawest form, has overcome it, and written a book about it. She is also an award winning writer and director of TV and television. His book with directors such as Steven Spielberg and Mark Burnett. It is my pleasure to welcome on the show my good friend, SHAWNA Baca. Hello, SHAWNA. How you doing? Welcome on the show.
Hi, Elvis. It's so good to see you. I
Good
haven't
to
seen
see
you
you
in
too.
person in a long time. So
I
it's
know.
always
Good to
wonderful
see
to
you.
see and be here live with you.
Absolutely. It's great to see you and have you on the show today. Let's get right into it now.
Sure.
Like, I've seen a few things about you. I see a few things about SHAWNA Baca, but I'm quite sure that you can tell us more about who you are and what some of the things that you are involved in.
Well, I think like everybody else on this human journey, I am just a spiritual being having a human experience.
Oh, hold on there. A spiritual being having a human experience. I
Yes.
hope everybody's listening. That's classic. That's profound. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that, you know, we all have a sense of purpose in our lives and things that we want to do. And sometimes life has a way of sort of discombobulating your plan, instead of the divine plan that is in store for us. So, I like I said, I'm a spiritual being having a human experience, and I've had a lot of different experiences with a lot of healing, a lot of tragedy, like overcoming a lot of tragedy in my life. And eventually I became a storyteller at some point in, my later life. And I think that as a writer or a storyteller, you have to be able to experience things in order to, shed these stories and create story arcs. And so, it has been sort of a troublesome, time in my life where, I had a lot of loss at a very young age, being raised by a single mom, and, all the tragedies and hardships of being raised, in a kind of lower economic environment, and sort of having to find and fish my way and struggle, through getting outside of that limiting the limiting factors, that sometimes life will throw at you, and being able to learn how to persevere out of that and shift yourself. So I spent many decades basically trying to figure out like who I am, what's my purpose, what's this life about, what's this journey about, what's important, because I think a lot of times we put values on things that are tangible, but they're not necessarily like the rewarding part of our, our achievements and victories.
Okay, so what are some of the works that you are doing now? Some of the things that you are actually involved in? Maybe the work, because I mentioned that you work on TV and film. You've written documentary and even participated in writing a documentary, I think, or film. So what are the things that you are involved in now?
Well, I first started off making short films, and then I started creating new media content for corporate clients and nonprofit organizations. And then I produced a feature documentary. And, I've been writing a lot. I want to direct my first feature film, but my life course sort of took a turn about 10 years ago. At the height of me making all my films and doing really well, and there was that economic crash of like 2009, 2010, and things just like the economy just shut down. The entertainment business kind of shut down. People weren't spending as much money on new media campaigns at that point. And at that time in my life, I had lost my childhood best friend. I lost my best friend, and I lost my grandmother, my maternal grandmother that helped raise me. So I was used to coming from, like a young age. My dad died when I was like 7.5 months old. And then my sister's father died when she was like 6 years old. And I mean, when I was 6 years old, she was under a year when he died. And then my stepfather committed suicide when I was 17. So I was used to the men in my life dying, but not women, and to have such a matriarch in our family die was really a devastating blow. Plus my best friend, and then my childhood best friend, who I knew since I was 5 years old. So it kind of spun me out into a grieving depression. And it was one of those situations where you want to evaluate, like life purpose. When people start dying around you, and these are people that you grew up with all your life, it's a very shocking, surreal experience, and leaving you thinking, oh my gosh, I want to make films. I have a desire to, write a television pilot. But really, is that, what my purpose is? Is that what's going to make me happy? And the connections that we have with the people that we care about and we love are far more important. And it took some time, and that became another life lessons for me. So as I was evaluating and reevaluating, where do I go from here? How do I pick up these pieces? Like, I don't understand, this surreal idea of death. Like, I didn't really quite understand it. And even being a spiritual person, or consider myself a spiritual person, I have these ideas and beliefs about, what happens after we die. But at the same time, here I am, as a human going, oh my God, these people are gone,
Wow.
So I evaluated my life, and I thought, well, I have only 2 regrets in my life, and one is not having my dad, but that's something that I don't have control over. And then secondly, I never got to finish my schooling, because while everybody was going to college, I had a panic attack disorder and an that turned into agoraphobia, and I didn't leave my house, for a year. So while everybody's life was kind of going and shifting, mine sort of had come to a halt. So I decided that I was going to go back to school to finish the degree, because I thought, I don't know if I'm going to make it to 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, but I don't want to look back and not have finished that. That was, something that was important to me. And, the industry kind of shut down for a little while. So it gave me a chance to kind of look and go back. And, it was a lot of hurdles to get over going as an adult to school.
Yeah.
Plus, they were like, oh yeah, this credit doesn't transfer. So there was all these other classes and stuff. But I went back to school. And when I went back to school, I went for screenwriting, because I thought, if I want to be a good filmmaker, I had been directing stuff. I said, stuff starts with story. So I went back to school. I did that. And then that's where I kind of saw that all these kids had anxiety, and panic attacks. So that's what sparked the book. Was okay, all these kids live in this world of fear and panic attacks and anxiety and depression and suicide. It's is a big deal on college campuses. And so then that's where I was like, what, I'm just going to write my book.
Well, speaking of book now, in your book, you describe vividly the manifestation of fear. You
Yes.
described how that really transpired. Could you tell us just a little succinctly what is fear itself? How does it manifest itself? And are we too afraid fear? Are we to be fear, to have fear of fear? Can you describe what is fear, the manifestation of it? Do we need to afraid of fear?
Actually, so I think a lot of us have misconceptions about fear. I mean, I could list all the negative things, obviously, about it, and those are the same things that everybody else would agree upon. We have this bad feeling. You're afraid to do something. It holds you back. I don't want to feel this way anymore. But fear is really the opposite of love. So when you understand this emotion, or how your emotional parameters, kind of work, which I don't think we're really given the life skills or the life tools to really learn how to gauge our different emotions. And I've had to learn over time, when I used to get anxiety attacks, I didn't want to feel that way. The first thing I wanted to do was get rid of that feeling. Nobody wants to feel bad. So you try to push away, you try to suppress, you try to bury it, you could self-medicate it, you can pretend that it's not really happening. But what I have learned, and I think it's the smartest thing for people that do actually teach these techniques, is, and I thought this was the craziest thing, when a woman by the name of Dr. Linda Badessian said to me, you don't walk away from your fear. Your fear is your body telling you that something's not working, that something's not right. Your body is talking to you, right? But sometimes we're like, our minds and our bodies are disconnected. Like, we don't really gauge, let me take an inventory of how I'm feeling. And then you feel bad. You don't want to feel bad anymore. You want to feel we're taught that that's like not normal to feel that way. So I was in a lot of pain, for instance, after, my best friend and my grandmother died. And I did not want to feel in that place or that space. But like I said, Dr. Linda Badessian said, you have to sit in that fear, because in that fear will give you the answers of why you're in so much pain. Because, when you're in that kind of much pain as well, we can physically manifest. I mean,
Absolutely.
from a psychosomatic standpoint, I mean, when I was having anxiety attacks, panic attacks, agoraphobia, I would literally like throw up. I would get headaches. I would feel like nauseous, and these are all physical manifestations of an emotional sparked feeling, right? So I had to learn how to sit in my fear and not walk away
Wow.
from the fear.
Wow.
To me now, fear is it's an energy,
Energy.
I mean, do you know how many like crazy things that I thought of when I was having agoraphobia? How much fear that I put out into going outside in the world. Like, you could not take me outside. Like, that
Yeah.
power of perception of that fear became
Yeah.
so debilitating that I was like, oh my God, what if I took that fear, rechanneled that energy, and used it for action?
Into something positive.
Into something positive.
Absolutely. Well, here's the thing. I actually even read somewhere, it might be even in your blog or book, that fear, it's an acronym that means false evidence appearing real.
Yes.
Now I want to repeat that. Fear, FEAR, false evidence appearing real. It seems as though it's just an illusion. And I want to get back with that in terms of, have you read Mel Robbins?
The motivational speaker.
Yeah,
I've seen her. She's great.
Speaker. She written the book, The 5-Second Rule. In that book, she says that the physiological response of fear It's the same as the arousal when we are excited, right?
Exactly.
So
Yes.
much so that we can use the shifting within 5 seconds to change from fear to excitement. And this is an example. If you are afraid of flying, for instance, right? And then what are you afraid of? It's just a thought in your head that the plane might crash, that
Yeah.
something might happen. It's just a thought that is making you afraid. So when you start to count from 5 to 0, like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, you snap. And instead of thinking that the plane might crash, you might actually start to think of the positive outcome. The person that you are going to see, you are flying to see, maybe your family that you will be hugging when you're going to see them, maybe your loved one that you would hold in with when you're going to see them. So when we change that fear into a positive outcome, you see, our body will still react the same, because when we are afraid, our heart start racing, our palms start sweating, and then our breath started to labor. And these are the same physical manifestation that we have when we are excited. So when we shift in our brain with the 5 second rule, we can change a negative outcome, a negative thought, into something positive. That's another way of overcoming fear. So in your case, for instance, I know you have calmed that fear. What was the decision behind overcoming that fear? The moment that you spend a whole year not wanting to go out, not wanting to face certain reality. How did you come up with ideas, with a way to overcome that moment? Because it can be paralyzing.
Well, I mean, I think that it was a combination of a bunch of different things because, I'm, first of all, like when I had agoraphobia, I didn't leave my house for a year. My mom is Native American, and she had feared that Western medicine had failed me after a year of not leaving my house. So she basically essentially kidnapped me, took me to the Paula Indian Reservation. I saw a medicine man who cured me that night in a sweat lodge ceremony. So when, which is fascinating, right? Because I had been going to therapy. They had tried to put me on medication. And here is the power of prayer, from this medicine man, this who prayed over me. And basically, I mean, it was nothing short of psychic surgery, took all that energy that had been pent up. And that was mind blowing. And it made me embark kind of on a spiritual path after that, because I was fascinated that, I could be cured when I was terrified, of going outside. But it wasn't just one thing. I mean, it took me a lot of different things. It took me different modalities, a couple different therapists. And a lot of it was just maturity, like learning one step at one time. It's like, when we set goals for the new year and we put 10 things on us, we end up achieving none of them because we put too much on ourselves. So it was kind of, it took time. One thing I learned, was like unlayering the onion. Like, let's take this layer out, let's take that layer out. And, again, by the end of it, I basically, I had a mind, and they say perception is reality. So I had like a monkey mind of things, and negative, it was a negative for a really long time. Because when you grow up in, I grew up in East Los Angeles, and it's like with a single mom who had essentially 3 dads die, by the time she was 17. And you see all your friends like are either in gangs or, getting incarcerated or killed, or, you keep going down the escalator, eventually you're just going to believe that power of perception is going to believe that you're never going to achieve anything. You're never going to, because like all these bad experiences keep happening, right? So, and our brains are like cameras, and we compartmentalize everything. So, it really, what I had to do ultimately, I think the last step was basically stand up to that bully that was in my head telling me I wasn't good enough and telling me that I would never achieve, I would never be happy, I would
Mm.
never, like, oh, this happens for other people, but it doesn't happen for me.
Mm.
And that is something that we learn in over time through our
Mhm.
experiences,
Absolutely.
but it's not who we are as
Absolutely.
a soul being.
Yeah.
So to get over that, you have to flip the script and change that narrative. And
Yes.
it's not easy. And,
Yeah.
like, I don't know about you, you're like one of the most positive people that I know. Like, every time I see you, you're like super happy. So either you were born that way or you learned how to be that way over time, and to not let the little things get you, because I also believe that we are constantly manifesting. So if
Yes.
I believe that nothing good is ever going to happen to me, then nothing good is ever going to happen to me. And even if I've had 25 experiences to justify that in my head, I have to
Yeah.
change that narrative. It is
Yes.
like a form of meditation. We have to completely practice it. It's a daily practice until we
Absolutely.
actually believe it. And part of me going
Absolutely.
back to school that was the last voice in my head that
Absolutely. Absolutely.
said, I didn't get the job because I wasn't good enough. Oh, I didn't get the job because I wasn't educated enough. Oh, I never got a degree. I hope they don't know that I don't have a degree. And I
Yeah.
said, you know what, I'm going to go challenge that right now, and I'm going to tackle this. And it took like a couple years, like, away from away from my life as a filmmaker. But I'm going to tell you, I go to sleep at night and I wake up in the morning and I don't have that negative voice. And if that negative voice comes in and tries to seep in and try to tell me anything, that I'm not good enough, that I don't, that I'm too old to do that, whatever it is, I
Yeah.
challenge it. I
Yeah.
challenge that voice.
It's kind of interesting because for those who are watching us, you use the term agoraphobia. I want to remind people that agoraphobia means the fear of people. The fear of people. There are people who are afraid of other people. So speaking of, you know me, and then I'm always the happiest that you can possibly see. I just want to bring a little bit of science in here. That there's a scientific research that shows that we are 50% born with certain parts of happiness in us, but the rest of the 50%, we need to actually make up that happiness. And sometimes it's not about the circumstance or the events, it's about our mental predisposition. It's about
Yes.
flipping that script in our head, changing the narrative, the story that we tell ourselves, so that because if we see that, yes, it's possible, then it will be possible. If you see that it's impossible, it would be impossible. It's about the narrative, the story that we tell ourselves. So it is interesting to see how you have transformed your life from a person were who was gripped by the fear of agoraphobia to do the things that you do now. Since we are heading toward the last moment of our show, I just want to ask you an advice. We are actually headed into a new year. So, what can you say for those who are afraid to take that leap into their dream? The person, because it's about fear. I know fear actually stops us from achieving the things that we want to achieve, maybe our goals, our dream. So, what can you tell these people, especially this new year, coming from a year that was very tragic, uncertain, full of anxiety and depression and so much of a negative. So, what could you tell anybody entering into a new year, the 2021, with sagacity, with diversity, with great energy, and be able to tackle the moment and seize the year?
Well, I definitely have had a lot of conversations with different people because about 2020, we look at 2020, we say we're kind of in this weird political, atmosphere of the unknown, the direness of these political parties, the divide of this possible civil war. Um, we've got this virus that in our lifetimes we have never ever experienced. I mean, we haven't experienced this since 1918, and there's not that many people out there that are still alive, from 1918 that survived the Spanish influenza. And a lot of people lost jobs. A lot of people are on the brink of getting evicted. But what this is also doing is it's forced us to change, like it's forcing us to change in a lot of different ways. And what I mean by that is I say to people, okay, yes, it's a little scary to be in a pandemic. How do we get outside of ourselves? Because isolation can be very detrimental. But what I could tell you is, like most people, I have been affected by this pandemic, and everything that's going on in our atmosphere. But I mean, I finally decided, okay, I'm going to publish my book. I started a blog. I learned how to build websites, actually.
Wow.
I've done some audio work like on this book. I've written I wrote a pilot and a script, and it's been placing in festivals. I'm working on another creative project that I've been wanting to do for 2 years. I just haven't had the time to do it. So what I'm saying is that I've talked to other people, and one of them launched a web series, which she's wanted to do this for a long time, but she hasn't had the time. So, I feel like as humans, we are we need to create, and it is given us some space to do things a little bit different and maybe focus on some things that are important. I think the other thing is, if you're going into 2021, I would say set a small goal for yourself. I mean, not 10 things, in the new year, my New Year's resolution is I want to lose weight. I want to launch a business. I want to get a new car. I'm going to buy a house. It's like you have to kind of break down these goals so that you have these small achievements.
Absolutely.
But I think that the biggest thing is I have gratitude that I'm safe. I'm alive, and that the loved ones that I have not been severely affected by coronavirus. And I think that happiness is a state of mind. So I think if you start it with gratitude, you start it with the belief system that 2021 is going to be a better year. It's going to I'm going to practice this on a daily. I'm going to just, like I wish for everybody like watching this, that their single goal coming in to 2021 is just staying healthy and practice being happy every day. Even if it's doing something small for yourself, like take a walk, read 5 pages of a book, like set these small goals for yourself, and, stay connected with your loved ones, because that's probably the most important thing.
All right, then. If anybody wants to find out about you, where can people find you?
Well, you can either go to SHAWNABACA.com, or you can go to my book site, which is fearless-book.com. And there you can find my blog. You can find out all the juicy secrets and, about me and my past and, what's going on with me.
All right, Shawna, thank you. It's been a great pleasure having you on the show. And thank you, everybody, for watching the Elvis Show today. It's been a fantastic moment sharing this conversation with everybody watching, with our fantastic guest, Shawna Baca. Thank you, everybody, and see you next time.
Probably Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to all of you. Thank you. Happy New Year. Bye-bye now.